What if getting everything you ever wanted was actually a trap? We're told our entire lives that money solves all our problems. But here's a controversial thought: winning the lottery could be the worst thing that ever happens to you. It can isolate you, make you question everyone's motives, and force you to lose the one thing that's truly priceless: your identity. This is a story for anyone who has ever felt like they had to hide a part of themselves to survive. It's about a man who got the golden ticket but realized it came with a heavy price, forcing him to make a choice most of us would never even consider. I have a strong belief that the ultimate test of a person's character isn't facing poverty, it's handling power. What you do when you have everything, when no one is watching, is what truly defines you. So what if a man won an unimaginable fortune, and instead of buying yachts and supercars, he decided to become a ghost? We're about to explore a story of a man who returns to the broken-down hometown he escaped from, not as a conquering hero, but in disguise, on a secret mission to save the very people who never gave him a second thought. The curiosity is, why the mask? What is he so afraid of? But here's where the story gets truly complicated. What happens when this quiet mission of mercy leads him directly into the path of the one person he has every reason to despise? The woman who shattered his heart years ago, who told him he wasn't enough, is now a widow, drowning in debt, and about to lose everything. Suddenly, his secret mission becomes a deeply personal test. In the next few minutes, you're going to get a front row seat to the messy, complicated, and beautiful space that exists between revenge and redemption. This entire story boils down to one gut-wrenching question: is it possible to truly forgive the person who broke you? And what if the absolute power to save them, or to let them fallon's right in your hands? We are about to dive deep into a story of secrets, second chances, and the true price of mercy. You won't want to miss a second. So do me a favor, make sure you're following the channel, share this with someone who loves a story that hits you right in the heart, and let me know in the comments where you're watching from tonight. Have you ever seriously considered what you'd do if, overnight, you became wildly wealthy? It's funny, isn't it? We all dream about it, but the reality of that situation can be far more complicated. For Owen Torres, it wasn't a moment of pure joy, it was a seismic shock that reordered his very soul. He stared at the ticket, then at the bank balance, and the only thing he could feel was a deafening silence. The dream of a rags-to-riches return was real, but he knew, deep down, that money is just an amplifier. It makes people more of who they already are. Owen, being the man he was, immediately thought of the disasters had witnessed. Friends who got a small inheritance and suddenly had no friends left, only interests. Had seen how money can curdle good intentions, turning conversations into transactions. So he made a choice that 99 of people would never make: silence. He became, in that instant, a lottery winner in disguise, not out of fear, but out of a wisdom most of us spend a lifetime trying to acquire. He knew the real prize wasn't the digits, but the peace of mind to remain himself. Think of it like getting a superpower. If you could suddenly fly, would you tell everyone the first week? Or would you first learn how to land without breaking your neck? Owen was learning how to land. He kept his job, his routines, his small talk at the corner diner. On the outside, nothing had changed. But inside, he carried the weight and glory of a monumental secret. The question shifted from "what can I buy?" to "who can I become?" This is the kind of mindset that separates the merely moneyed from the truly wealthy. A lesson straight from books. Like the richest man in Babylon, the loneliness of this secret was palpable, you know? It was like walking around with a sun in your chest that no one else could see. He started to watch the daily struggles of people around him with a new, painful clarity. The waitress needing a new car, the local grocer fighting against big box stores. Before, he felt empathy. Now, he had the power to actually change it all. This realization began to forge a purpose within him. The idea of an underdog becomes savior, not for glory, but for the sake of the act itself. The money was just the tool. This silent phase was his chrysalis. He was transforming from an ordinary man into an anonymous philanthropist. An unseen benefactor. He began to research, to study, to plan. This wasn't about spending, it was about investing in human lives. He realized the greatest purchase he could ever make wasn't a yacht or a mansion, but hope. He was preparing for a mission that would require more than a checkbook. It would require memory, and merciful memory of where he came from, and the mercy to lift others up. And it was in this cauldron of quiet thought and careful planning that one idea began to burn. Brighter than all the rest, his hometown, a place of bittersweet memories, of futures lost, and of people had left behind. A place that desperately needed a miracle. He wouldn't be going back as Owen Torres, the kid they all knew. No, this called for something more. The idea of a homecoming with a twist began to take shape, a return that no one would ever see coming, especially not from him. There's a strange power in anonymity, a freedom that comes from shedding your own history. Owen didn't just drive back to his hometown, he orchestrated a complete reinvention. He was no longer Owen Torres, the boy who'd left with a broken heart. He was now M.R. Davies, a polite, unassuming representative of the Northwood Legacy Foundation, a legal entity had created out of thin air. This was the ultimate hidden identity twist. A mask crafted not for deception, but for observation. He needed to see the town for what it truly was, without the baggage of his past coloring every interaction. The town itself was gasping for air. Walking down Main Street was like seeing a photograph of his youth slowly fading. Businesses were boarded up. Hope seemed to be in short supply, and the weight of economic hardship was etched on every face. It was a town full of small-town secrets, where everyone knew everyone else's struggles, but no one had the power to fix them. His homecoming with a twist wasn't just a personal journey, it was a rescue mission. And he was the only one who knew the cavalry had arrived. He set up a small, temporary office in a rented storefront, deliberately modest. The sign on the door was simple, professional. It was all part of the plan. The truth beneath the mask. He wasn't a flashy billionaire swooping in, he was a quiet facilitator. A man whose sole purpose was helping without recognition. People were skeptical at first, as you'd expect, in a town where promises were often broken. A stranger offering help with no strings attached seemed too good to be true. He just smiled, handed out applications, and listened. His new persona was his armor. It allowed him to ask questions, to dig into the heart of the community's problems, without anyone asking, "Who are you to care?" It was a masterful performance. He adjusted his posture, deepened his voice slightly, wore glasses he didn't strictly need. These small changes, combined with the passage of years, made him a ghost in his own past. He could move freely, gathering the intelligence he needed to enact real change, becoming a true lottery winner in disguise in the most practical sense. This meticulous disguise was about efficiency and purity of mission. If they knew he was a local boy who'd struck it rich, everything would become personal. Old grudges, family ties, and jealousy would cloud the entire process. The money had to be clean, untethered to the messy history of Owen Torres. It had to be a lifeline from a stranger, a force of nature. He was an actor playing the most important role of his life, and the stage was the very place that had created him. He felt a strange mix of nostalgia and detachment. As he drove the familiar streets, every corner held a memory, every landmark a story. Yet, as M.R. Davies, he had to remain aloof, an outsider looking in. He was a whisper of hope moving through the decay. His true identity, a secret buried deep beneath layers of legal paperwork and a carefully constructed lie. The mission was clear, the pieces were in place, but he couldn't shake the feeling that this carefully built facade was about to be tested. The mission wasn't just to give away money, it was to strategically restart the town's heart. Owen, as Mr. Davies, understood that a handout can be a temporary fix, But a hand-up can change a generation. His foundation wasn't a charity fire hose, it was a tool for surgical investment. He reviewed applications each night, not just looking at numbers, but reading the stories between the lines. He was searching for the tipping points, the small investments that would create the biggest ripple effect. Embodying the spirit of helping without recognition, he started with the basics. The first grant silently paid off the mortgage for the town's only grocery store, saving it from foreclosure. The next created a business revitalization fund, allowing longtime shop owners to repair their storefronts and update their stock. These weren't grand, headline-grabbing gestures. They were quiet, effective acts of an underdog become savior working from the shadows. He was planting seeds, knowing that it would take time for the forest to grow, and no one would ever know who the gardener was. It was a delicate balance of money, memory, and mercy. His memory of the town's pride kept him from making anyone feel like a charity case. His mercy drove him to help even those he remembered with mixed feelings. For example, he approved a grant for a new engine for the tow truck owned by a man who used to bully him in high school. It wasn't about the man, it was about the fact that the town needed a reliable tow truck. He was acting as a true rich man, thinking about assets and infrastructure, not personal history. People started to talk. Of course, whispers of the mysterious foundation spread like wildfire. Hope, an emotion that had been dormant for years, began to flicker back to life. Overhear conversations in the diner. People talking about the angel who'd saved their neighbor's farm or funded the new school library. He would just sip his coffee. The anonymous lottery winner in disguise, feeling a satisfaction deeper than any luxury good could ever provide. The truth beneath the mask was that he was healing his hometown. And in doing so, he was healing a part of himself. His process was a lesson in effective philanthropy. He didn't just write checks, he provided resources. Alongside a grant, a family might get a session with a financial planner. A new, small business owner would get access to a marketing consultant. This is how you create lasting change. It's not just about giving people fish, it's about teaching them to fish, and maybe even helping them finance a better boat. He was rebuilding the ecosystem, not just restocking the pond. But this grand, impersonal project was about to run headfirst into a very personal complication. He managed the town's fate with the cool detachment of a CEO, but he was still a man with a past. And as he sifted through the next batch of applications, one name leaped off the page. A name he had spent a decade trying to forget. A name that threatened to shatter his carefully constructed world. It was a gut punch. There, in neat cursive handwriting on application form 72, was the name Layla Clark. Well, Layla Hamilton now. But the application noted she was a widow and was using her maiden name for professional purposes. Time seemed to stop. The air in his small office suddenly felt thick, heavy with the ghosts of a life had left behind. This wasn't just a past comes full circle moment. It was a full-blown cosmic collision he never, ever anticipated. The woman who had been the catalyst for his departure was now asking him for help. He leaned back in his chair, the papers trembling slightly in his hand. Layla. He hadn't seen her in 10 years, but he could picture her perfectly, the way she laughed, the ambition in her eyes, the casual way she had told him he wasn't enough. The memory was a scar he thought had faded, but seeing her name made it burn anew. The path from heartbreak to healing felt like it had just been reset to zero. He was supposed to be the detached benefactor, the rich man with a plan, not the heartbroken boy shed left in her dust. The irony was crushing. Here he was, the secret lottery winner in disguise, holding the fate of the one person who judged him for his lack of prospects. The universe clearly had a twisted sense of humor. This wasn't a scenario he had planned for. His mission was about rebuilding a community, not confronting his most painful memories. Suddenly, the line between his past and present was gone, blurred by a single sheet of paper. This was a complication that threatened the very foundation of his mission. He felt a wave of conflicting emotions: anger, pity, and a morbid curiosity. A widow? He remembered hearing she'd married some wealthy guy from out of town not long after he'd left. He had always imagined her living a life of pampered luxury, a world away from the struggles of their hometown. The idea of her being in need was disorienting. It didn't fit the narrative he had clung to for all these years. It hinted at small-town secrets he wasn't privy to and a story far more complex than had imagined. This was the ultimate test of his new identity. Could he remain Mar Davies when faced with Layla Clark? His entire project of helping without recognition was predicated on emotional distance, a distance that was now impossible. He felt the first crack appear in his armor, the first hint that the truth beneath the mask might be more volatile than he realized. The potential for a second-chance love was the furthest thing from his mind's survival was the priority. He read the first few lines of her application, his heart pounding a nervous rhythm against his ribs. She was requesting assistance to prevent foreclosure on her family home, the home she grew up in, the home where Head picked her up for their first date. He closed his eyes, forcing himself to breathe. This changed everything. His carefully orchestrated, anonymous return had just become deeply, terrifyingly personal. Digging deeper into Layla's application felt like an act of emotional archaeology. Each line item, each attached document, painted a picture that was the complete opposite of the life Head imagined for her. The wealthy husband, it turned out, was a phantom of prosperity. He had passed away suddenly, leaving behind not a fortune, but a mountain of hidden debt and bad investments. The beautiful life she had seemingly chosen was a house of cards, and it had come tumbling down in the most brutal way. It was a cruel reversal of his own rags to riches return. She was on the verge of losing her childhood home, the very place he remembered as being full of warmth and laughter. The irony was so thick he could taste it. He, Owen Torres, the boy she'd left for a life of financial security, was now an anonymous rich man reading about her financial ruin. This was one of those small-town secrets that nobody talked about openly, but that simmered beneath the surface. A successful family that was secretly falling apart. He felt a pang of something he dared not name. Was it pity? Or was it something more? The application detailed her struggles with a stark, humbling honesty. She was working 2 jobs waitressing at the same diner he now frequented and cleaning house just to keep food on the table for her and her young son. A son. The word leaped out at him. She was a mother. This detail added a layer of complexity that he was unprepared for. His neat, tidy narrative of the ambitious girl who left him for a richer life was being systematically dismantled. The situation called for money, memory, and mercy, but his memory was what was causing all the trouble. He found himself thinking about her late husband. Owen had always carried a bitter resentment for this faceless man who had won. But now, the story was different. The man wasn't a victor, he was just another flawed person who had left a wake of destruction. Layla wasn't the pampered wife of a wealthy man, she was a widowed ex-redemption story in the making, fighting to survive the mess her husband had created. She wasn't asking for a handout, she was asking for a lifeline. This new information put Owen in an impossible position. His mission was to help the deserving, to be an underdog, become savior for the whole town, by every objective measure on his own rubric. Layla Clark's application was a top priority. She was a single mother, facing homelessness due to circumstances beyond her control, and working tirelessly to stay afloat. But his heart was screaming in protest. Helping her felt like a betrayal of the boy she had wounded so deeply all those years ago. He stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the sleepy town he was trying to save. He had the power to rescue her, to grant her the stability she had once sought with another man. He could do it with the stroke of a pen, and she would never even know it was him. It was the ultimate act of helping without recognition. But could he do it? Could he save the woman who had shattered his world? Their first face-to-face interaction was in the most mundane of places, the diner. He was Amar Davies, sitting in a booth with his coffee and paperwork. She was Layla, his waitress, moving with a tired efficiency that spoke of long hours and endless worry. She approached his table, notepad in hand, and gave him a polite, weary smile. "Coffee?" she asked, her eyes glancing at him for only a second before moving on. Nothing, not a flicker of recognition. For her, he was just another customer. For him, it was a thunderclap. The truth beneath the mask held firm. 10 years, a bit of weight lost, the addition of glasses, and a far more confident, measured way of carrying himself had rendered him a stranger. But it was more than that. The boy she knew was insecure, eager to please, his heart perpetually on his sleeve. This man was quiet, observant, and radiated a calm authority. He was a lottery winner in disguise, and the disguise was as much internal as it was external. He had undergone a complete emotional transformation. He ordered his coffee and watched her walk away. It was surreal. He was a ghost in his own life story, interacting with a main character who couldn't see him. This hidden identity twist was working better than he could have ever imagined. But it brought a strange ache with it. A part of him, a foolish younger part, had wanted her to see him, to see that the boy she'd dismissed had become someone of substance. But her obliviousness was a blessing, the very thing that allowed his mission to continue. Later that week, she had an appointment at his foundation office to discuss her application. She sat across the desk from him, looking nervous but determined. She laid out her situation with a candidness that impressed him, never making excuses, only explaining the facts. He listened intently, playing the part of the compassionate but professional Mr. Davies. He kept his questions formal, his tone even, fighting every instinct to let a personal memory slip through. He was a rich man playing a part, and the stakes had never been higher. He saw the lines of stress around her eyes, the resilience in her posture. This was not the carefree girl he remembered. Hardship had carved new depths into her, and he found himself reluctantly admiring the woman she had become. She was fighting. He remembered her ambition, but now it was directed not at status or escape, but at survival for her and her child. This wasn't the Layla from his memories. This was someone new, forged in the fires of loss and responsibility. As she left the office, thanking him for his time, he felt a profound sense of dislocation. He had successfully remained anonymous, a stranger offering a potential lifeline. The mask was intact, but as the door closed behind her, Owen Torres, the boy who still lived somewhere inside him, was left reeling. He was closer to her than he had been in a decade, yet he had never been further away. The distance between them was no longer miles, but a carefully constructed lie that he was now forced to maintain. The decision weighed on him for days. He'd pace his small apartment at night, Layla's application sitting on his desk like a judgment. His mind was a battlefield. One side was the wounded teenager, screaming that she'd made her choice long ago, that she didn't deserve his help. This side saw it as a bitter irony, not a call to action. It whispered about justice, about letting the past comes full circle on its own terms. It was the voice of ego, of pain, of a heart that had never fully healed. But the other side, the voice of the man he had become, argued with a quiet, persistent logic. This voice spoke of his mission's integrity. It reminded him that he was here to be an underdog, become savior for the entire community, not just the parts that were easy to love. His purpose was helping without recognition, and that principle had to apply to everyone, or it meant nothing at all. Denying her application based on a personal grudge would make the entire foundation a sham, a tool for his own ego. It was a test of money, memory, and mercy. He finally sat down, picked up a pen, and with a deep breath, he signed the approval. He didn't just approve it, he fast-tracked it. He structured the grant to cover her mortgage, arrears, and provide a small monthly stipend for 6 months, giving her the breathing room she so desperately needed. It was an act of pure, unadulterated mercy, completely anonymous. The lottery winner in disguise had made his choice. He chose the man he wanted to be, not the boy he used to be. The relief he felt was immediate and profound. It wasn't about her, it was about him. It was an act of love and forgiveness. But the forgiveness, he realized, was for himself. He was forgiving himself for holding on to the pain for so long. By saving her home, he was letting go of a piece of his own heartbreak. The journey from heartbreak to healing had to be an active one, and this was the first, most difficult step. He was proving to himself that his new wealth had given him more than just money, it had given him grace. He filed her paperwork away, placing it in the approved pile with dozens of others. Her story was now just one of many, a single thread in the tapestry of community renewal he was weaving. He had successfully separated the personal from the professional. He had looked his past square in the eye and chosen to act with compassion instead of bitterness. He was truly the rich man now, rich in character, not just in coin. A few days later, he saw her in the grocery store. She hadn't received the official letter yet, and the worry was still etched on her face. But soon, that would change. Soon, she would get the news that some anonymous foundation had given her a second chance. She would never know the truth beneath the mask, that her silent savior was the boy whose heart she had broken. And for now, that was exactly how he wanted it. The letter from the foundation changed everything for Layla. When Owen saw her next, a week later at the diner, the tired, hunted look in her eyes had been replaced by a glimmer of light. She smiled a real, genuine smile when she saw him and insisted his coffee was on the house. "You have no idea what your foundation did for me, Mr. Davies," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "You gave me hope." And so began their strange, layered friendship. A connection built on a foundation of secrets. Their interactions became more frequent, more natural. He made a point of having his morning coffee at her section, and she made a point of stopping to chat for a few minutes. They were an unlikely pair, the mysterious, quiet benefactor and the resilient single mother. They talked about the town, about her son's latest antics, about simple, everyday things. It was a slow, careful dance of ex-lovers reunited. Only one of them knew they were dancing. For Layla, he was just a kind man, a safe harbor in a storm. There was laughter. Guarded, yes, but real. He made a dry, witty observation about one of the town's more eccentric characters, and she let out a laugh that was so familiar it made his chest ache. For a moment, she wasn't Layla the widow or Layla the waitress, she was just Layla. And he wasn't Mr. Davies, he was a man sharing a moment of levity with a woman he was becoming increasingly drawn to. This budding, second chance love was both a comfort and a quiet terror. He had to constantly monitor himself, to keep the truth beneath the mask. Had asked about her past, feigning simple curiosity. She spoke of her life in broad strokes, of a difficult marriage and the shock of widowhood. She never mentioned the boy she left behind. Why would she? To her, Mr. Davies was a stranger. Each shared story, each moment of warmth, added another layer to his deception and paradoxically made him feel closer to her. He was walking a tightrope, and he didn't dare look down. This was a new phase of his journey from heartbreak to healing. It was no longer about the grand, anonymous gesture of saving her home. It was about the small, daily interactions. It was about seeing her not as a symbol of his past pain, but as a person flawed, funny, and incredibly strong. He was connecting with the woman she was now, even as his secret tied him inextricably to the boy he once was. He started looking forward to their conversations, more than he would admit. He'd find himself thinking of things to tell her. Small jokes or observations he thought she'd appreciate. It was a dangerous game. The guarded warmth between them was growing, and he knew it couldn't last. Sooner or later, the man he was pretending to be and the man he actually was would have to reconcile, and he feared the collision would break them both. Before His image of Layla was frozen in time, a confident, slightly self-absorbed teenager with her eyes on the horizon. But the woman he saw now was entirely different, reshaped by love and loss. The most profound change he witnessed was her devotion as a mother. He'd see her in the park with her son, a bright-eyed little boy named Leo. There was no trace of the ambitious girl he knew, only a patient, loving mother completely focused on the small world they shared. It was a revelation. He saw her humility in 100 tiny ways. He saw it when she meticulously counted her change at the grocery store. He saw it in the way she thanked him, Mr. Davies, with such profound gratitude for the Foundation's help, never once showing a hint of entitlement. The hardship she'd endured hadn't made her bitter, it had made her gentle. It had stripped away her youthful pride, revealing a core of strength and grace he never knew existed. This was her widowed ex-redemption, playing out right before his eyes. One afternoon, he saw her at the community library, patiently helping Leo sound out words in a picture book. She looked up and saw him, offering a small, unburdened smile. They spoke for a few minutes, and she talked about her dreams for her son, not for him to be rich or famous, but for him to be kind and happy. In that moment, the last vestiges of his old resentment began to dissolve. The past comes full circle, not with vengeance, but with understanding. He realized the story had told himself for 10 years was fundamentally wrong. He had painted her as a villain in his narrative of heartbreak, a cautionary tale about ambition and status. But the reality was so much more nuanced, so much more human. Watching her with her son was a powerful step on his own path, from heartbreak to healing. He wasn't just forgiving her, he was finally seeing her clearly for the first time. This new perspective complicated his feelings immensely. The quiet warmth he felt for her was no longer just guarded, it was growing into something deeper. Something that felt dangerously like the love he once had. But this time, it wasn't a naive, youthful infatuation. It was an admiration for her resilience, her character, her devotion. He was falling for Layla, the woman, not the memory of the girl. And that was a far more perilous situation. He was the underdog become savior. But the person he was saving was slowly becoming the person who could save him right back. He was an anonymous hero to the town. But in these stolen moments, Layla was becoming a hero to him. She was teaching him about a different kind of wealth, one measured in love and perseverance. The mask of Davies was beginning to feel less like a disguise and more like a cage. Just when his heart began to soften, the old doubts would creep back in, insidious and sharp. Was this humility real? He'd watch her thank him so profusely, her eyes shining with gratitude. And a cynical voice in his head would whisper, "She's just playing a part." This is the voice of old wounds, the kind that never fully disappear. He was trapped in a cycle of his own making, wanting to believe in her transformation, while simultaneously searching for proof of the girl he used to know. The conflict was tearing him apart. One day, he'd see her give her last few dollars to a homeless man outside the diner, and his heart would swell with admiration. The next, he'd overhear her talking to a friend about how the Foundation's help was a godsend that allowed her to finally breathe. And the cynical voice would question her motives. Was she grateful for the stability, or for the status that came with not being desperate anymore? It was a maddening internal debate between the truth beneath the mask and the lies he told himself. These suspicions revealed more about him than they did about her. They showed that part of him was still that insecure boy, unable to believe he could be valued for who he was, rather than what he had done as the lottery winner in disguise. He held all the cards, all the money, yet he felt powerless. He was wrestling with one of the most difficult questions in the journey of love and forgiveness. How do you know when someone has truly changed? Can you ever really trust the redemption you're witnessing? He started to subtly test her, something he felt ashamed of even as he did it. He'd casually mentioned the board of his foundation, inventing wealthy, influential members, just to see if her eyes would light up at the mention of status. He'd talk about future, larger projects, gauging her reaction, but she never took the bait. Her focus always remained on the tangible good the foundation was doing for the town and her gratitude for her own second chance. Still, the doubt lingered, a poison in his mind. This internal struggle was a crucial part of his homecoming with a twist. He had returned to fix a town, but he was forced to confront the broken parts of himself. He thought the money gave him all the power, but in the face of these old emotions, he felt as lost as ever. The small-town secrets weren't just about other people. The biggest one was the war he was fighting within himself, a war between memory and mercy. He knew he couldn't keep this up. The strain of living a double life, of constantly questioning her motives and his own, was becoming unbearable. He needed some kind of sign, something to silence the cynical voice in his head for good. He needed to know, once and for all, if the Layla he was growing to love was the real one, or just another beautiful, convincing mask. The breakthrough came on a quiet Tuesday evening. The diner was nearly empty, and Layla was wiping down the counter. The exhaustion of the day settled on her shoulders. Owen, or Mr. Davies, was her last customer, nursing a final cup of coffee. Perhaps it was the quiet intimacy of the moment, or the simple, non-judgmental kindness he had consistently shown her, but she started to talk. Really talk. Not as a grateful recipient of aid, but as one person to another. "You know," she began, her voice soft, "this town holds so many ghosts for me." She spoke of her youth, of the immense pressure she'd felt to escape, to make something of herself. She confessed that she'd equated success with money and status, a lesson she had learned the hard way. "I married for what I thought was security," she admitted, her gaze distant, "and I ended up with neither security nor love." It's a heavy kind of irony. This was the first glimpse of her unvarnished widowed ex-redemption. Then, she said the words that changed everything. "I was so foolish when I was young. I thought I was so smart. But I was just a kid. There was this boy." She paused, a sad smile touching her lips. "He was the kindest boy, so full of dreams, but I was afraid his dreams weren't big enough for the both of us. I broke his heart to chase a life that turned out to be an illusion." She shook her head, a deep, genuine regret in her eyes. "I don't know where he is now, but I hope he's happy. I hope he found someone who saw how worthy he was." Owen just sat there, frozen, his coffee forgotten. The past comes full circle right there in the dim light of the diner. She was talking about him, and she was doing it with no agenda, no knowledge of who he was. She was giving her confession to a stranger, which made it all the more powerful, all the more true. The truth beneath the mask was finally revealed, not his, but hers. And it was a truth filled with remorse and hard-won wisdom. In that moment, he wasn't the rich man or the lottery winner in disguise. He was just Owen, hearing the words he never knew he needed to hear. Her regret wasn't an apology aimed at him to gain favor. It was a scar she carried, a part of her own private journey from heartbreak to healing. She had judged herself more harshly than he ever could have. It was a profound act of love and forgiveness, even if the forgiveness was for a past she couldn't change. He left the diner that night, feeling like the world had tilted on its axis. The cynical voice in his head was silent, utterly vanquished by her raw, unsolicited honesty. He had his proof. She had changed, or perhaps she had simply become the person she was always meant to be. But this revelation didn't simplify things. It complicated them on a whole new level. Hearing Layla's confession was like a dam, breaking inside him. The carefully constructed walls had built around his heart. The professional detachment of Mr. Davies all crumbled in an instant. The love he had for her, the deep, foundational love he thought he had buried a decade ago, came rushing back with the force of a tidal wave. It was overwhelming, exhilarating, and terrifying all at once. The possibility of a second-chance love was no longer a vague notion. It was a vibrant, aching reality. But love, he was quickly reminded, rarely travels alone. Alongside this resurgence of affection came its shadow, the ghost of the original pain. He remembered the sting of her rejection, the feeling of being weighed and measured and found wanting. The journey from heartbreak to healing is never a straight line. It circles back, forcing you to confront the original wound before you can truly move on. He loved the woman she had become, but he couldn't completely erase the memory of what the girl she once was had done. This emotional storm was his to navigate alone. He was a paradox, a powerful rich man. An underdog becomes savior to an entire town, yet he was emotionally adrift. He would watch her from afar, his heart full of this newfound complicated love, while the memory of their last conversation as teenagers played in his mind. The duality was maddening. It was a story of ex-lovers, reunited where one person was still living in the past while the other didn't even know the play had begun. His feelings for her were now undeniable, a powerful force pulling him closer. He wanted to tell her everything. He wanted to cast off the truth beneath the mask and show her who he really was. He yearned to start over, to build something real and honest with this woman who had fought her way back from her own heartbreak. The idea of love and forgiveness was no longer an abstract principle for his foundation. It was the central question of his own life. He knew, however, that the truth would be a bombshell. Revealing his identity wouldn't just be a personal revelation. It would detonate the hidden identity twist at the center of his entire mission. It could undermine all the good he had done, making people question his motives, and worse, it could shatter the fragile trust he had built with Layla. How could she believe his feelings were genuine when their entire reconnection was based on a monumental lie? He was caught in a trap of his own design. His desire to help his town anonymously had led him back to the one person who could unravel him completely. The love was real, the pain was real, and the secret was a ticking time bomb. While he wrestled with this internal chaos, the whispers in the town were about to grow into a roar, shifting the focus from his heart to his identity. The town was waking up. The quiet, surgical acts of the Northwood Legacy Foundation had accumulated into a full-blown revival. Main Street was bustling. Families were secure, and for the first time in years, there was a palpable sense of optimism in the air. But with prosperity came curiosity. People needed a story, a reason for their good fortune, and the vague explanation of an anonymous donor was no longer enough. The whispers started in the diner, spread through the grocery store, and echoed in the town hall. Who was this Mr. Davies really? Where did the foundation's money come from? Theories began to fly, each one more elaborate than the last. Some thought he was the eccentric heir to an old money fortune, doing his penance. Others speculated he was a tech billionaire who had chosen their small town at random. The mystery of the underdog becomes savior became the town's favorite pastime, a puzzle everyone wanted to solve. The small town secrets now had a new, tantalizing chapter. Owen, still operating as the quiet Mr. Davies, found himself at the center of this unintentional whirlwind. Head-field probing questions with polite, practiced deflections, but he could feel the net tightening. His carefully constructed anonymity was becoming a liability. The more good he did, the more people wanted to know who was behind it. His mission of helping without recognition was so successful that it was making recognition inevitable. The persona of Mr. Davies was starting to fray at the edges. This growing speculation put him on edge, not just for his mission, but for his relationship with Layla. She, like everyone else, was curious. She'd ask him gentle questions about the board and the foundation's origins, full of innocent curiosity, about the man and the entity that had saved her. Each question was a small torture, forcing him to either lie or evade, pulling the truth beneath the mask ever tighter. He was the lottery winner in disguise, and his disguise was becoming the most talked about topic in town. He knew it was only a matter of time. In a town this small, a secret this big couldn't be kept forever. Someone would get curious enough to do some real digging. A reporter from a bigger city might catch wind of the miracle town and start poking around. He had planned his homecoming with a twist so meticulously But he had underestimated one thing: human nature's deep-seated need to understand the why behind the what. The pressure was mounting. The town's gratitude was morphing into an intense public curiosity that threatened to blow his cover. He had wanted to be a whisper of hope, but he had become the main headline in a story he could no longer control. A large community fundraising event was being planned to honor the Northwood Legacy Foundation, and they insisted that Myra Davies be the guest of honor. He knew he couldn't avoid it, and a knot of dread formed in his stomach. The stage was being set for a reveal he wasn't ready to make. The charity event was held in the newly refurbished town hall, a symbol of the very renewal he had funded. The room was packed, buzzing with a celebratory energy Owen had never seen here before. He stood awkwardly near the stage, dressed in a suit that felt like a costume, playing the part of the humble Mr. Davies. The mayor was giving a speech, thanking the mysterious foundation, and decided to present a slideshow of the town's journey of revival. And that's when everything fell apart. To show the town's history, the mayor projected a series of old photos. There was the old mill, the class of '98, and then a picture of the high school robotics club from 10 years ago. In the back row stood a lanky, grinning teenager with a mess of dark hair. The mayor laughed, saying, "Look at these kids." Some of them moved away, like this bright young man, Owen Torres. Always wondered what happened to him. A polite ripple of laughter went through the crowd. But Layla, standing near the front, just stared. She looked from the grinning boy on the screen to the quiet, bespectacled man on the stage. Her eyes widened, the color draining from her face as a decade of change was bridged in a single horrifying instant. The way he stood, the set of his jaw beneath the beard, the eyes behind the glasses, it was him. The hidden identity twist unraveled right there, under the warm glow of the projector. The truth beneath the mask wasn't just revealed, it was publicly executed. Owen saw the moment of recognition in her eyes, and his blood ran cold. Before he could react, an enthusiastic local journalist, who had been doing her own digging, seized the moment. "Wait a minute," she yelled from the crowd, her voice amplified by the microphone she was holding. "Torres? The State Lottery Commission database shows an Owen Torres from this county won a $90 million jackpot 2 years ago. Mr. Davies, are you Owen Torres?" The room fell into a stunned, absolute silence. Every eye was on him. The game was over. The carefully constructed world of Mr. Davies evaporated. He was no longer the anonymous benefactor or the lottery winner in disguise. He was just Owen, the boy who left, now returned as a secret rich man. The homecoming with a twist had reached its chaotic, unplanned climax. He could see the shock and confusion on the faces of the townspeople had helped. But the only face he could truly see was Layla's. Her expression wasn't just shocked, it was a complex storm of confusion, betrayal, and a deep, gut-wrenching hurt. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. The silence stretched for an eternity before people started murmuring, the shock turning into a disbelieving buzz. He saw Layla push her way through the stunned crowd and head for the exit, not looking back. The public reveal was a disaster, but it was the private one, the look in her eyes, that shattered him completely. He found her outside, standing under the pale light of a street lamp, her arms wrapped around herself as if to hold herself together. The noise of the town hall felt a world away. When she heard his footsteps, she turned, and her eyes were glistening with unshed tears, but her expression was hard, guarded. "Owen," she said, his name tasting like a foreign word on her tongue. The shock had worn off, replaced by a cold, simmering anger. The man she had been pouring her heart out to, the kind stranger who'd saved her, was a lie. Was any of it real? She demanded, her voice trembling with the effort to stay controlled. Or was this all just some twisted game for you? Some grand, elaborate revenge? The question hung in the air, sharp and painful. She was looking back at every conversation, every kind gesture, and reinterpreting it through this new Devastating lens. Was his help an act of money, memory, and mercy? Or was it a cruel way of showing her what Shed lost, of proving that the boy Shed deemed not good enough had become? The underdog becomes savior. The confrontation was raw, emotional, and stripped of all pretense. The past comes full circle, not with warmth, but with accusation. He tried to explain, to tell her about his initial mission to help the town, how he never expected to see her, how his feelings had become tangled and real, but his words sounded hollow even to his own ears. How could he explain the truth beneath the mask when the mask itself was such a profound betrayal? "You watched me," she said, her voice cracking. "You watched me grieve, you watched me struggle. And you said nothing." He could see the narrative she was building in her mind. The scorned boy returns as a rich man, a secret lottery winner in disguise, and toys with the woman who broke his heart. He saw how his silence, intended to protect his mission, now looked like a calculated cruelty. He had wanted to offer her love and forgiveness, but from her perspective, his actions looked like the exact opposite. He had approved her application, saved her home, but was it from a place of compassion or a place of power? This was the emotional reckoning. All the secrets were out, and the fallout was devastating. "The foundation," she whispered, the realization dawning. "My house. Did you help me out of pity? Or was it to make yourself feel good, to have the ultimate last laugh?" She didn't want his money or his help if it was tainted with revenge. The very lifeline he had thrown her now felt like a chain, pulling her into a past she thought she had moved on from. He stood before her, stripped of his disguise, his money, his power. He was just Owen Torres again, the boy who loved Layla Clark, and he had hurt her more deeply with his well-intentioned lie than she had ever hurt him with her youthful, honest rejection. He had to make her understand his heart, but he didn't know how. The path forward was completely obscured by the wreckage of his hidden identity. The days that followed the revelation were filled with a tense, aching silence. The town buzzed with the news, but for Owen and Layla, the world had shrunk to the space between them, a space filled with unspoken words and shattered trust. They finally met, not at the diner or his office, but at the old, secluded park by the Rivera place of neutral ground. There, with no one else around, they had the conversation they should have had from the start. It was messy, painful, and utterly necessary. He didn't make excuses. He simply told her the truth, starting with the lonely shock of winning and the earnest, if naive, desire to do good without fame. He explained how seeing her had thrown his world into chaos, and how he had wrestled with the ghosts of his own making. He confessed his lingering pain and his growing, genuine admiration for the woman and mother she had become. It was a raw, vulnerable confession, the final step in his journey from heartbreak to healing. Layla listened, her initial anger slowly giving way to a reluctant understanding. She, in turn, laid her own regrets bare once more, not as a confession to a stranger, but as an apology to the man she had wronged. She acknowledged the pain she had caused him and recognized the monumental, if misguided, act of love and forgiveness he had shown by saving her home. It was an emotional reckoning for both of them, a cleansing fire that burned away the last of the secrets and resentment. In the end, they were just two people, flawed and scarred by their pasts, who had found their way back to each other through the most bizarre of circumstances. They chose forgiveness. Layla forgave Owen for his deception, understanding it was born from a complicated mix of good intentions and old wounds. Owen forgave Layla for the past, finally and completely, seeing the strong, wonderful woman who stood before him. Now it was the ultimate act of money, memory, and mercy, where mercy was the only currency that mattered. Their story became one of true ex-lovers reunited, not by reliving the past, but by choosing to build a new future. They decided to explore this second chance love, this time with no masks, no secrets, only absolute, terrifying honesty. The path forward wouldn't be easy. The town now knew his story, and their relationship would be under a microscope. But for the first time, they would be facing it together. The lottery winner in disguise had finally shed his costume, and the widowed ex redemption was complete. Their individual stories of heartbreak had converged into a shared narrative of healing. The past comes full circle, not as an ending, but as the beginning of a new chapter, one where love was not about status or secrets, but about seeing each other clearly and choosing to stay, this time for all the right reasons. And so, a story that began with a secret number on a lottery ticket ends with a simple truth shared between two hearts. Owen and Layla's journey reminds us that the heaviest burdens we carry are often the secrets we keep. And the greatest fortunes we can possess are forgiveness and a second chance. They went from heartbreak to healing, not because of the money, but because they chose to face the past and build a future based on honesty. It's a powerful testament to the idea that true wealth has nothing to do with what's in your bank account, and everything to do with the richness of your character. Now I have to turn the question over to you. What part of this story impacted you the most? Was it the shocking reveal at the charity event, or Layla's quiet, heartfelt confession in the diner? I'm genuinely curious to know if you expected a different ending. Were you rooting for them to get together all along? Or was a part of you hoping Owen would just walk away? There's no right or wrong answer, so please share your honest thoughts in the comments below. This story is also a profound reminder that, in many ways, we all wear masks. We might not be a lottery winner in disguise, but we often hide our vulnerabilities, our past pains, or our true feelings out of fear of being judged or rejected. That it makes you think about what kind of truth might be sitting just beneath the surface in our own lives, and the freedom that could come from finally letting that truth out, first to ourselves and then to the people who matter. Thank you so much for joining me on this incredible emotional journey. If their story of love, loss, and redemption moved you, please take a moment to hit that like button. It makes a huge difference and helps the channel grow. And if you want to make sure you don't miss the next story we have lined up, be sure to follow the channel. We have many more journeys to take together.